Hello, I'm David Petts from Durham University. I've spoken to you before a couple of times about the work I've been doing with Dig Ventures on Holy Island. I think I came up to the island and I talked about the archaeology of the island on a very, very windy day. I think it was in the early spring last year. And then we did some filming looking at the maps and plans of the island. And all this was part of our planning in advance of actually going and doing the archaeology. So over the summer, we did the excavation, and we found wonderful things. We found nice things. We were after evidence for the Anglo-Saxon monastery. We dug 3 trenches. One of them produced lots of later medieval material and just a hint of early medieval material. But 2 of our trenches, the trenches near to the priory, produced what we think is pretty good evidence that we are on the site of the Anglo-Saxon monastery itself. You don't get many finds in early medieval sites on the whole, not compared to, say, a Roman site or a medieval site. But nonetheless, we did have hints of Anglo-Saxon stuff, and crucially, a lot of the finds, although we didn't find many small finds, a lot of the ones we did find were all clearly Anglo-Saxon, 7th, 8th century AD, which is bang on the money for what we were after. And crucially, in the interesting trenches, we didn't find lots of later medieval stuff, so we did seem to have a nice layer of Anglo-Saxon, which wasn't all mucked around by later activity. In one trench, we found lots of kind of smoking gun evidence for an Anglo-Saxon cemetery. So our nicest find, I think, is this thing. It doesn't look much, but it's remains of an Anglo-Saxon, probably a headstone or gravestone. You've got a nice curved top to it, and it's a bit tricky to see because it's quite finely carved. You've got a kind of frame round the top, and then there is a circle there, a bit of a circle there, and they would have been terminals of a cross. There would have been a central roundel there, and then there are traces of a name, which you probably can't make out, you have to take my word for it, but it's a name of an Anglo-Saxon, and that name is probably Utfrith. So that's the name of an Anglo-Saxon monk, or potentially an Anglo-Saxon member of the aristocracy, who was buried in a cemetery on Holy Island. This dates probably to the 7th or 8th century, and it's part of a group of very similar kind of little gravestones, which you already know exist on Holy Island, and particularly these round-headed ones, are really only known from Holy Island. So it's really good, clear evidence that what we've got is definitely the stuff we were targeting. We've got another fragment of sculpture from the same trench. It's a slightly different stone, it's a much lighter stone, and again it's very fragmentary, and I'll talk about that, why it might be fragmentary, in a minute. We've got what's probably the shaft of a cross, would be a long thin cross, and then there are 2 smaller little crosses, or crosslets, either side. Now it doesn't look much, but it's really interesting because you don't find these kind of little side small crosses on any of the sculpture we know of from Anglo-Saxon Northumbria. We've done a good look and we can't find any comparisons from Anglo-Saxon Northumbria. What we can find is comparisons from southwest Scotland, so it's kind of Galloway essentially, heading down towards Whithorn, and other parallels from kind of western Scotland, and even parallels over in Ireland. And it's a reminder, of course, that the monastery at Lindisfarne was founded by a monk from Iona, a monk who had lots of links with the Irish and Scottish Church, and that certainly the early period in Lindisfarne, it was as much a Scottish monastery as an Anglo-Saxon one. So that's really nice little bit of sculpture, completely different from anything else found in the area. We also found a lot of bits of human bone, not in graves, but mixed up with lots of rubble, which that rubble included these stones. It's what we call charnel, so it's all kind of mixed up bits of bone, but it's really well preserved. Interestingly, there's remote bones of adults and children. And also we found lots of little smooth white quartz pebbles, and we know from other Anglo-Saxon sites that they were often put on graves. They would have kind of decorated the grave, and they might have had some biblical symbolism. So together we found human bone, gravestones, little stones which are put on burials, So I think there's good circumstantial evidence that we're very, very close to an Anglo-Saxon cemetery. And in our final day or two, when we were excavating in that trench, we just started to get series and lines of kind of vertically set stones, which might be parts of stone-lined graves, or they might be parts of stone gullies related to either buildings or some kind of industrial occupation. So we really have good evidence that we're in the right area, everything's of the right period. The really big question is, what are we going to find when we open up and expand our trench in the summer?
If you want to keep tabs with all things linked with this excavation, follow Lindisfarne, the Holy Island Archaeology Project, on Facebook and Twitter here. Links available in the video description.